We recently worked with Cinemark on a project that they were trying to accomplish, and we thought it would be a good idea to kind of have this event in the Cinemark Theater, kind of celebrating the end of that first project that we completed with them and where they went and where they had. And Scott Bauer is going to come up and talk to us a little bit about his experience and what they were trying to accomplish and where they were and where they are today.
Okay, great. I want to say thanks for having me, and thanks for coming to the Cinemark Theater to watch the great movie today. What I talk about is going to be really different than Rent-A-Center. Rent-A-Center is really, really advanced in what they're doing. And at Cinemark, we're still moving forward slowly on a lot of these things. So a brief history. I've been with Cinemark about 9 years. We have approximately 500 theaters. We're in 14 different countries. Where you see most of the technology at Cinemark is actually in the theaters. The corporate data centers and things like that, they're very small in comparison to a Rent-A-Center. About 10 years ago, Cinemark had a data center, and it was underpowered, it was unorganized, it didn't make a lot of sense. So when I came into Cinemark, we made the move and did it kind of the old-fashioned way. We put in the old 6513 catalyst switches, ran a bunch of cables, it put in a whole bunch of power, did the traditional thing. About a year ago, we renewed that contract for our data center, but we started looking towards the future. And everyone's talking about cloud, and everyone's talking about all these emerging technologies. And so, beginning in January of this year, we replaced all of our Cisco infrastructure. We went with the UCS path. So now we have our UCS blades, Nexus switches, and all the latest and greatest technologies. Way back when I saw VMware, I didn't quite get it. I have to be honest. When I saw a GSX server and I could run 2 servers on one, I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then I could run 3 and 4, and then all these different new versions came out, and all this stuff started happening. Well, I can say now that Cinemark is all in on VMware. And the reason we're all in is because we believe that it's the best hypervisor, it has the best tools, and it has solutions for more than just problems that are related to technology, as we heard from Rent-A-Center. Something else that I think is very important is how I met Mobius.
Sure.
I think depending upon what positions you're in, you get a lot of phone calls, you get a lot of emails about, hey, come see the Steve Jobs movie, for example.
Yeah.
Or, I want to meet with you, I want to do this, I want to do that. You know, we want your business. That's a challenge for all of us to manage. The reason that I'm here today is because it's not because Mobius has great cold callers, it's because VMware brought Mobius to us. When we had expressed an interest in changing and updating our VMware environment, they said, let's bring in Mobius. So I know inside every company there's challenges related to the politics of we do this here, we do this here, we do this here. I can say with confidence that we navigated through that process and we've been very successful with it. So if there's concerns related to that, it's something we were able to get through. I'm also told if I say Mobius, I get $10 each time, so I'm going to say Mobius, yeah. Mobius, Mobius, yeah. Mobius. But again, VMware brought them to us. And now we have taken that small piece of business where we used to run some VMware here and we were on 5 standard and all this stuff. Now we're up on VMware 6 Enterprise Plus. We're obviously using the high availability, the distributed resource scheduling. We did get the operations manager piece, which I can't speak in all the detail because we just recently finished the product and I'm just not that experienced with it. What I've seen, it's wonderful in what it can do for us. Site recovery manager is something else that we're using, and that is critical to our continuity plan for moving forward in the future. Now, we talked a lot about automation and one-button clicks and things like that. In terms of the future for VMware and what we're going to do at Cinemark, you know, we don't know for sure, but we know there's a big cloud out there. I know in a few years that I'm going to have to look at my data center again and decide what I want to renew. The most important thing from a management perspective that I guess I could leave you with is that we have put ourselves in a position where in these 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're going to be able to make the right decisions to best serve the needs of the customers, which could be our theaters, could be whatever, the accounting department, whoever that is. But we're going to be able to serve them and make sure that we're getting the best value. If that best value is implementing many of these automation methods, we have the ability to begin that process now. So it's been a long road with me and VMware over the last 10, 15 years. And every time I see it, I'm still a little bit amazed that we can do more and more and more with it. So I know my presentation is significantly different than Rent-A-Center. It's not necessarily a technology viewpoint. But if you have any questions or doubts or anything that you'd like to discuss, I know there's a few minutes for an open session that we'll be filming. And then I have 2 guys that work with me, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions one-on-one. So
Sure.
if you have any questions,
Sure.
please.
Yeah. So I know that, you know, when we did start the project, when we were brought in, you know, some of the things that you were trying to address and Cinemark was trying to address was, you know, the need for a highly resilient, available network or available infrastructure, and you know, a better way to do disaster recovery, right, and high availability and those types of things. And you know, how's a little bit about the project that we just completed with Cinemark. You know, they were a vSphere 5.5 a customer. They wanted to upgrade to vSphere 6 to take advantage of some of the new features, specifically around distributed switches and NetFlow.
Correct.
But also for the new features in high availability and DRS and those types of things. But one of the things that they didn't have that they wanted to address as well was DR.
Correct.
And so how did, you know, how has this helped you address those problems, those needs that you had for where you were and where you're trying to go for these first steps? You know, how has this vSphere 6 upgrade and the Site Recovery Manager addressed your needs and problems, and has it been good, bad, and different? Where do you stand on those things today?
So we finished the project just a few months ago. When we started the project, I gave them an impossible date to meet.
Another impossible date.
Yeah, it was an impossible date, and we missed it by about a month, which was actually ahead of when I thought it would be done. So they did a fantastic job. And since then, we have a Site Recovery Manager up and running, and we're still in the initial phases of testing and validating that it's doing, because I have to admit, sometimes you just don't believe that it works. Because
it's
before
too easy.
There were complicated processes and stuff, so sometimes when things are too easy, we don't trust them that much. So we're still walking through that trust process. And as we continue to do our tests and document our tests and get the trust of the various departments, it will accelerate and we'll be able to have 100% of our plan implemented. But it's a great way to do continuity.
Right,
it really changes the way that we think about the levels of difficulty to get things accomplished.
Okay. And Cinemark also has some vCloud Air similar to Rent-A-Center. So when we talk about that, it's different. It's different primarily in scale, right? They're still doing a lot of the same things. So there's big organizations, small organizations that can all take advantage of this, and it does good for everyone. But what were your DR? How did you handle DR in the past before Site Recovery Manager?
So DR in the past, we have a person that's directly responsible for that, works with the different the key players, whether it's the application owner or the technologist and things like that. And while we still have that coordinator, now they're not focusing on necessarily how to do this little data part or this little part, but we're focusing on, okay, now we need to take this object, get it over here, we know it's going to be here, let's automate a small process here. And it's real. I think it's made it a lot easier for us. Again, we're still in the early stages, so I can't tell you that I've tested all of my key applications and I didn't have any issues. But from what I've seen, and I've seen enough on the applications we've tested, that it looks really good. And I think our continuity program is going to be able to expand and be more detailed. Continuity has a lot more to do than just technology. And so now, instead of just focusing on the technology, we can take this particular resource I have, and we can go ahead and have them focus more on time with the business units and do other things that really do add additional value. So I think a lot of the value gain for Cinemark has been outside of necessarily bits and bytes.
Right. Okay. And your plans to leverage, so we do have a site recovery manager that's working. You do have vCloud Air Disaster Recovery as a Service, and I know you're not fully using that yet, but starting to dip your toe in that water
Yes.
and test it out a little bit. How's that going?
Right now, I would have to leave that for the technical guys to
Sure.
get into the details,
Okay.
honestly. But it looks very promising, and again, it's kind of the path that we're looking at. We're looking at moving potentially some development servers out there first.
Right.
That's kind of the first step everyone does. After we get comfortable with the development steps, then we'll go into more of the continuity side. We do have Site Recovery Manager, and we do have the old way still of storage and servers and that type of environment. The reason we did that is because we're comfortable with it, and management is comfortable with it. So to take them and just say, hey, we're going to put in this new stuff and then everything's going to be up in the cloud in case of emergency, that's a little bit for them to swallow, especially when there's an investment in infrastructure and things like that. So Site Recovery Manager is the main method right now,
Right.
with the eye on the future being that cloud-based service.
Okay. And I know before we started this project, you didn't know Mobius, we didn't know Cinemark that well.
Correct.
We know we've made it through this first project together. What was your experience working with Mobius and the consultants that we have and the project in general? How did it go?
So I traveled a lot during the implementation, so they actually got to use my office.
Right.
I didn't leave a mess, so that was good. But seriously, they did a great job. It was very clear what it was that were the objectives. So it wasn't like, well, maybe we're going to have this done. It was etched in stone what our objective was. So by defining the objective, we actually could determine if we had success or if we had a level of failure. And then every week, I would get a nice update that, while it was a little long at some times, reading on my phone, it had that page that said, hey, these are the areas where we have issues. These are the people that are responsible for working on them, whether it was a Cinemark employee or whether it was a Mobius employee. Sure. And we actually did run into issues on our side that we had to resolve with our UCS implementation. And because of that, we actually slowed Mobius down, and they were still able to accelerate through the issue after we got our part corrected and come very close to what our date was.
Yeah. All right, I appreciate that.
So,
and I will say that Scott was honestly tough to get over, right? He wasn't just because VMware's bringing you here, I'm going to let you do all this work. It was a test. It was we're going to let you come in now. We're going to do this one project. Let's see how it goes, right? And I think we passed that test.
Absolutely. Mobius has done a great job for us, and I don't know where everyone in this room is in their VMware path and their converged infrastructure. But if you're interested in doing basic things like Cinemark is doing or more advanced things like Rent-A-Center is doing, Mobius can be that partner that can help you do that. And VMware, I can't stress enough, is a great platform. What I've talked about is the small part, just server compute and storage and things like that. But when we get into not just vCloud Air, but mobile device management and other technologies, they're building a great portfolio of products that I think are going to help me and Cinemark be successful in the future. I think it can do the same for others.